This is Sportish.
Do it better.
This is Sportish. This is Sportish. This is Sportish. This is Sportish.
This is Sportish. It's the show that we started to talk about sports during a global sports shutdown. My name is Geoff Brault. I'm joined by Dr. Keith Strudler, who's the director of the School of Communication Media at Montclair State University. Shout out to Mike Wallace, our producer. Our television network is for the fans. You can find it at ftfnext.com. All your favorite episodes are on demand. Our podcast network is all of them. Just search for Sportish, rate, review, all that good stuff. We need you. All right, Keith, right off the top, very important. We need an update on the status of our war. Sportish versus your cat, Mia. Is she in the room with you this week after she wreaked havoc on last week's episode?
No, she's decided not to sit this one out, it seems like. Now, to be fair, I'm going to make you feel bad about yourself. She had to go to the cat hospital this weekend. I think she's not feeling particularly well. We're waiting on the results. It does not appear to be life-threatening, but apparently she may have a hyperthyroid issue.
Huh. So you might say she caught some bad karma then.
Well, I think this is all related. So there's been some vomiting. So if you think what she's doing to Sportish is bad, you should see what she did to the carpet. So she hates Sportish. She really hates woven rugs. Really.
And this is not a good time in your life for you to have carpet cleaners and things like that happening in the house, because I don't know if people know this. I don't think we've ever gotten into it. This is not your only major television production that's coming up in the next week.
No. Well, I mean, this obviously is the most important TV production.
I should hope so.
Each and every week. And of course, by the time you'll see this, it'll be done. I also have a major event as we film this evening with my good friends, Peter Baker and Susan Glasser.
That was not
White
what
House
I was
correspondents. Yep. White House correspondents and authors of the book, The Man Who Ran Washington, on James Baker, which also is interesting to me because he grew up in Houston, and I would, many of the places that he frequented and so forth are places that I too, being of a certain social standing, frequent. And my wife actually went to the same high school as the Baker family, as well as George W. Bush.
Huh. I can't imagine a less interesting anecdote.
But I'll top that one. But this weekend, we will be hosting the first ever Strudler Zoom bar mitzvah.
That's what we were getting at.
So obviously, given the pandemic, we are unable to have a safe bar mitzvah in our temple, nor are we able to have the giant blowout party where we all, sing along to Kool and the Gang or whatever you do. I guess that's really more of a wedding. You celebrate good times. Isn't that Kool and the Gang?
That's more of a wedding. What kind of weddings are you going to?
Well, that's what you always play, like funk music at weddings. That's just the thing. It's a Jewish thing.
I'm very confused now.
All right. So regardless, we're not going to be able to have the big party. We're not even going to be able to the ceremony at the temple. So what we've done is we've set up basically a mini sanctuary in our living room, complete with, coming Thursday, our very own Torah. Now, I, of course, in Sportish fashion, have bought an improved light kit, which you'll soon see on the Sportish set, and a high-grade webcam, which actually, if I look particularly sharp today, I've borrowed that to give that a test run.
You don't.
So we did a run through with the cantor. Of course, the cantor, for those of you who aren't aware, that is the Jewish singer, the singing part. So you've got the rabbi part, who's the speaking and the thought, right? And then you've got the singer, the guy. So whenever, I'm sure you've seen this, when you've seen the temples singing along to Hamilton, there's a very famous one from I believe the Upper West Side in Manhattan.
You overestimate what I watch on YouTube. But no, I thought that the boy getting bar mitzvahed had to do the singing.
Well, he will do obviously his Torah portion and all the things that you must do to become, a man, I suppose. But you do have the cantor. The cantor sings along and he plays, plays guitar and he does, does all these things. But yes,
there's a
portions-
guitar.
Oh, he plays guitar. No, this is
like a youth pastor situation. Is he going to ask all the kids to come around and rap with him for a bit?
Did you ever see the King of the Hill episode when Bobby gets into the rad Christian rock skateboarder scene?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. That's the first thing that came to my mind. Whenever you blend religious ceremony with guitar, like I feel like that's the only confluence.
What do you ever? That's a great episode. By the way, King of the Hill is a great, I think, underrated show. It's a great show.
I agree. Its problem is it was out right around the heyday of The Simpsons, and nothing's ever going to top The Simpsons.
Yep, absolutely. So, boy, I forgot where I was going with this now. What were we talking about?
Well, obviously the thing that I'm most...
So this is where I was. So do you ever, like when you, and this doesn't happen as much anymore because we're in a different age of music, but when you'd you were flipping through the dial on your radio and you're like, oh, like this is kind of catchy. And then all of a sudden you kind of realize you're listening to Christian rock.
That's happened. It's happened to me. But you know what I like? Has it ever happened to you where you don't realize it until I'm talking way later? Like there's so many playlists that are out now. And if you're listening to our podcast on, say, Spotify, which you can do, Sportish is available on Spotify. You might check out the Spotify Discover Weekly feature, some of my favorite features. And there's some songs that come across and you're like, well, this is great. I'm going to save this. I want to hear this again.
Yeah.
But then I found myself literally like months down the line after dozens of plays of this song being like, wait a minute. I'm pretty sure this is about God.
That's exactly what they want you to do. That is exactly how they want it, right? But it's, all of a sudden you're like, yeah, and he has risen, and you're like, well, who is he? And so, yeah, I have found that because they, leave it to the Christian rockers. They've got a nice catchy beat. I mean, I think Amy Grant, of course, being the matron of that whole. The matriarch of that whole situation. So.
Here's what I'm most concerned about with the virtual bar mitzvah.
Yeah.
Are the economics going to be as good for your boy?
It's an interesting question. All right. So the reality is no. I mean, I think, look, there is a different, so when you go to one of these elaborate bar mitzvah situations, you do feel like, look, I've just been invited to a fairly fancy hotel party. They come home with sweatshirts. They've spared no expense. You do feel as if you're going to have to write a significant check, right? Like you're paying your way. Like you're paying for your meal one way or another, right?
I understand.
So I think it's a little different when you're sitting on your couch Saturday morning and you flip on the TV and there's Sloan doing his thing and you're not getting surf and turf. Like you're not getting the party favors. You're not getting the pictures, right? You're not getting all that fun stuff. You're not getting the hat with your name spray paint on it on the end. So my guess is, although maybe this should be an appeal to all those. So I would expect it to be lower, but from a Strudler family perspective, this has been nothing short of a boondoggle. Like, you understand, we have been spared the brunt of what is, generally speaking, the most painful economic weekend of any family's life.
Oh, I'm sure. So in a sense, you've lowered expenses, which should make up for the fact that you will gross less.
Yes, absolutely. So we have.
You're hoping it nets out.
Yeah. Oh, well, we will. Look, these things are expensive.
I'm sure they are.
This is, well, let me put this. This is one of those things when if you have your event, of course, in Bergen County, of course, if you have your event at like the Hilton or the Crown Plaza, they're like, oh, I guess they're going modest. Like
Ridgewood Country Club was not available. They must have been hosting a web.com tour tournament. Sorry, the Corn Ferry tour, now the Corn Ferry tour.
So it's very, we will save money on this. Yes, it may be more difficult, obviously, for Sloan because he's not going to net as much. But what I did say, and I think this is a win-win for all of us. What I said was that instead of having the big party, right, and all the dancers, we were going to, when the NBA starts playing again, like legitimately playing, and like you can actually go to games. I said, and he's a big Rockets fan, we would do a West Coast tour of the Rockets. Like, wow. So we would, right? That's not bad. So
that's not bad at all.
No, it's not bad at all. It's a great situation, right? So we would line it up, and usually they'll go out and they'll play 2 or 3. They'll do Clippers, Lakers, maybe Golden State or whatever it is. They'll do, maybe they'll get up to Washington, or they're not playing, or I mean, to Oregon, to Portland, right? So I said we'll go 3-4 games. We'll go up and down the coast, and we'll watch ourselves some basketball. We'll rent a car, and we'll just do this. That's not a bad. Like in many ways, is that not? That's a pretty good thing, right?
I mean, it's way better. Way better.
Well, I don't know. You haven't been to some of these parties.
That's a good point. I haven't been to any of them, but I would way rather have that.
Yeah. Well, you also you're not particularly social in that regard.
True.
Yeah.
But,
So I don't think you'd like that.
But like parties they're so fleeting. And I feel this way about wedding. I feel this way about any big social get. They're fleeting. Like literally one of the best things I heard about a wedding is someone said that it's trading your life savings for 2 to 4 great Instagram photos, which if you think about it is kind of right. Like the big party that you throw, that's kind of the trade-off, right? Like all everybody's doing that's there is judging the choices that you've made.
Oh, that's for sure.
Oh, well, that's not as nice as the wedding I went to last weekend, or I would never have that at my wedding. That's very tacky. Or sometimes they're judging it positively, like, oh, this is very nice. I like this. And it changes nothing. It changes nothing. They're still your friends. They're still your family. And at the end of the day, you're just freaking tired.
There's a lot of judging that goes on in the bar mitzvah circuit. There is a lot. And even if there's a lot of backhanded compliments, a lot of backhand, like, oh, it's nice that you decided not to spoil them. Like they're saying, I mean, you understand there's a lot of, this was really nice. This was really nice. Like that is in itself is a backhanded compliment. That was a really nice ceremony. It was really meaningful. I'm sure he'll appreciate it. I mean, so these others, or they'll be like, so many of these are really so over the top. It's really nice that you may have just spent what you thought was your life savings on this. They'll be like, it's really nice that you kind of kept this modest in proportion.
I wonder if Sloan would be having an in-person bar mitzvah if he was, say, living in the heart of SEC country, where the coronavirus has reared its ugly head last week. The SEC had games postponed for the first time in week 7. Look, we have gone into depth about how we think that the optics that the SEC is putting out are not good, that they are taking liberties that they should not be taking with the virus. But I'm going to look at how the Nick Saban situation was handled as the other side of the coin, because I do think there are people when it comes to this virus that are only happy if everything is shut down, everything is eliminated. Everything must come to a halt. We must be miserable. Yep. That is the state that we must achieve. There can be no way to find joy. So Nick Saban tests positive for coronavirus. Appears to have been a false positive. I don't think we ever have known for sure. But what we do know is after he tested positive, he had 3 tests in which he was negative, and the third one came in time for him to be able to coach the game.
And took one of when he tested positive, it was one of those kind of, it's like a dime store. One of the ones, it might be, it's kind of like flipping a coin almost.
There were way too many people that I am comfortable with that thought that it was a high crime that Nick Saban coached that game. I don't agree with that. I mean, clearly the protocols were followed.
Yeah.
3 negative tests, and people are still like, well, he should sit out. Why?
There was a lot. Look, I think you're right. I think we're going to have to assume that it was a false positive. The timing of this whole thing, like if we were to reconstruct this on a timeline,
of course,
it's suspicious. Those negative tests seem to come in rapid succession at a very opportune time.
Sure, but
right?
No one.
You feel like you were taking the last test on the drive over to the stadium.
But
like,
no one was questioning the validity of the test. Everything that I heard was not. I don't think those tests are right. It was, this sends the wrong message. Why would I have to quarantine for 10 days? Why does he have access to all the tests? All legitimate questions. Why does Nick Saban have better access to testing than the rest of us? I guess the answer is because Nick Saban's more important than the rest of us.
Yes.
However,
and by the way, not Nick Saban, the rest of us were not coaching against the number 3 team in the country on Saturday evening.
Exactly.
It's kind of true.
I am certainly not one of those people who thinks that everything about this virus is stupid and inconsequential and it doesn't matter. I'm probably the opposite of that. But I'm also not one of those people who's going to come out here and think that, everything has to be shut down and that there can't be wins, right? Like, to me, it's a good thing that Nick Saban received 3 consecutive negative tests after he received his positive test and is able to work.
Yeah, I agree. I'd be more comfortable if Dan Mullen also.
That was next on the rundown. Karma got him just like it got Mia.
So the one thing I'll say, no, Mia has returned, by the way, just in case you're worried. She has returned and she is now watching the show live. She does really enjoy it, but I think she's going to have a harder time knocking over the webcam than she did the table. Just point of reference. So here's the other thing I would say about Nick Saban. And I agree with you. I think, look, we are getting close to a looming disaster with college athletics as we start to go. I mean, and this is coming, right? We're getting into winter. It is becoming, I don't want to say fairly obvious, but very likely that college basketball is not going to happen the way that we had hoped and assumed it might.
You jumped a tick down on my rundown because that's what we're going to get into in a second.
So we all for those that do care about college athletics, and some of this, some of the rhetoric is from people who really don't like college sports anyway, and that's okay. And this is just another way to kind of, and there's plenty of things to criticize about college athletics. This is one of those, like, let's kick them while they're down kind of moments, right?
Yeah, I think so.
But I think that's, and I think most people who really do enjoy college sports would like to find a way for this to work and don't want to just throw the whole thing out for a year because there could be some very dire consequences to that. But one of the things that I kind of agree with you on is Nick Saban seemed to be one of the few guys that was trying to do everything as right as he could. He made PSAs about wearing masks in the Deep South, where that could have gotten him locked up in jail for slander. That lying Nick Saban, right? I mean, and his old nemesis is running for Senate. He probably would have had him locked up, right?
Sure.
So this is about to be it's about to be in Auburn State, and so. So would that be? Is that one of the things? Kind of like Trump's running, like lock him up? Do you think that in Alabama you should lock the tide up?
What's strange? Doug Jones, who is the incumbent running against Tommy Tuberville, is running ads that Tommy Tuberville should not be elected because he was a bad college football coach. Like, they are running ads with his record, and they're like, couldn't beat Alabama. You think he can be your senator? Like, that has become a political line of attack.
To be fair, Doug Jones is not wrong on that. I mean, Doug Jones is not really wrong. There's a lot of people. You ask Charles Barkley, I think he'd agree. So, but Nick Saban did seem to be one of the guys, for all of the critiques of Nick Saban, and there are plenty to go around. He did seem to be one of the guys that said, all right, we're going to do this as safe as we can. I don't think he was ever rushing. He wasn't one of the guys that was rushing to fill the stands, right? He wasn't Ed Ogeron, I don't believe, and not in the same kind of regard. But he was absolutely, his whole shtick was, let's wear these stupid masks. I call it not stupid. Let's wear these masks. I'll do the PSA so we can start playing football. Because Nick Saban cares about literally one thing and one thing only.
Yes.
The next, he's got that Lou Holtz mentality. Like, I mean, this is like, if there's a nuclear attack in the United States and there's a week off when for Lou Holtz, that you don't want to play Lou Holtz after that, because he will spend the entire 2 weeks prepping for the game against North Carolina State. So yeah, exactly.
Which is a whole other set of problems, by the way. Like, when Nick Saban, I think he had that famous quote where somebody asked him, he thought about the election, and he was like, there's an election coming up. This was like 4 years ago, and that's not necessarily the best message to be sending either, but I think it underscores your point. This is a guy who is so hyper-focused on only one thing, football, that for him to come out and do PSAs about public health, pretty big step, right? Like, and I don't know. I just bristle very much at how politicized this whole thing has become. And it's very easy to tell it's very easy to link what a person thinks about the coronavirus and most likely how that person thinks politically. And to me, the fact that those two things have blended together is insane. And I think it's important that when there are times that you can call out lunacy on both sides, I think it's ludicrous that there's 40,000 people at some of these college football games. I equally think it's ludicrous that people think that Nick Saban shouldn't have been allowed to coach that football game. Like, both things are stupid. And I think both things need to be called out, and maybe we can find some kind of like intelligent response to this, and we can do things in a smart and safe way. But boy, it sure doesn't seem that way.
So how disappointed was Kirby Smart when he got that thing? Because I mean, Georgia has gotten really good at playing bridesmaid, right? And so,
Sure. Oh yeah.
So, I mean, do you think this was that Kirby Smart was a little like Santa Monica Track Club back at the '88 Olympics? Like someone's got to spike that test, like like Nick Saban is basically Ben Johnson. So he's got the virus, and we know he's got the virus. We gotta make sure that. I mean, he can't catch a break. This was his week. This was his week. This was his year. This was his year, and now it's over. Now it's Alabama against the Clemson team that is beating teams by nearly 70 points. Coronavirus be damned. Be damned.
Important side note. Has there ever been a quarterback whose name more aptly fits his university than Stetson Bennett IV?
That's not bad. That is good. It is good. I mean, it's Southern. It's got an air of aristocracy.
Like until Harvard starts Chaz Whiffenpoofer at their next football game, like I cannot imagine a better link between college football school and college football player.
You're assuming Harvard will play football ever again because the Ivies have decided the Ivies are not going to play a lot of sports for the heretofore. But I do. I like, and so again, I as much as the SEC really seems to be doing a poor job at managing this situation. I mean, from a PR perspective, it's just a nightmare and a hurricane. And
I'm surprised it hasn't been a bigger PR nightmare, though. Like, for whatever reason, it just doesn't. I have been, and we've brought this up a little bit before. I am amazed at how, and I think now we're up to, I want to say 23 games have been canceled or postponed, somewhere in the 20s of college football games that have been canceled or postponed because of coronavirus. I am stunned how blasé people are when another one gets announced. They're like, okay, they'll just play it in December. Like, that's fine. Right. They're just like, oh, okay, they're going to move it. That's going to be what it's going to be. And I've also been amazed how little investigation there has been into who's getting sick, how sick are they getting, what kind of, detrimental effects are they feeling, and the thoughts of those student athletes that test positive. Are they like, oh yeah, tested positive, feel fine, do them a thing for 10 days, and I'm right back there at practice? Or are some of these kids in a bad way?
So it does seem, and you talk to people on college campuses. I'm fairly well connected on, to a variety of campuses. I will say this, and I'm not saying this in a positive way. I will say this though. I do feel as though coronavirus on a lot of college campuses has now become kind of just like a thing. It's like, it's like a hangover. They're like, well, he got the virus. He's got to sit out for 10 days and then he'll be back. I honestly think that's look, clearly Clemson's numbers are 1 and they are undercounted. We know they're undercounted because they haven't tested everyone. Right. Yeah. So it might be a third of everyone. Like I honestly, like everyone's going to get it at Clemson. Right. And so I do believe, and if you look at the list of where this is most prevalent, the most, with the highest caseloads in the country, it is like it's like your college football top 20.
It is. Oh yeah. Yeah.
So I do believe, and again, neither of us have finished our epidemiological degree programs, mine, of course, being done by correspondence by mail, but it does seem as though they've kind of that is the ethos of many of these universities. Like, yeah, you'll go back to school, you'll get COVID. And again, it does seem, and I know only a few people whose kids have gotten it, and it does seem as though most of them get it and they recover and then they go back into whatever they were doing. So because that seems to be, and I suppose that is the majority of the narrative, correct? I mean, if you were to look at college age kids who get coronavirus, generally speaking, if a sixth of Clemson has gotten it, it's not like, I think most of them do seem to recover. It's obviously the problem with coronavirus is some don't, right? It's not like the flu. I mean, or it's not like the cold or something. So I don't know, but I think for the most part, they are going to continue to play because certainly at those universities and the legislatures that oversee most of those universities, because most of them are land grant public universities, I think they basically said, all right, you got 20 cases, wait till you got 6, then get back out there.
Okay. Well, not only are they going to continue to play this week, a bunch of them are going to start playing The Big Ten is back, baby. They are jumping right in, and they are jumping in. And this is the other thing that just blows my mind about this entire thing. And I understand we now know more about the virus than we knew back in, April, May, June, July, whatever. But the numbers now are essentially as bad as they were back then. They're marginally better, marginally. 27 states have case rates that are going up. 10 have reported single day highs, as in throughout the entire pandemic within the last week. And the Big Ten is like, let's get back to business. Let's get some football going. And now we've said on this program that the Big Ten safety protocols are the best in college football. I still believe they are. No reason to believe they're not going to be followed. And you can, I think, play college football, or at least, try to play college football under the standards that they have set. But it just seems strange to me that they jump back in now, because I'm with you worrying about a college basketball season being in peril. When you think about the fact that it's indoors and the fact that, all of the medical professionals say it's only going to get worse in the winter. It just seems like an odd time for the Big Ten to be hopping back into the fray.
Well, they already made that commitment, so it's going to be. You want to talk about college presidents preparing their letters of recommendation? Just wait till they're like, you know what, guys, we were this close, but I think we're gonna, with an abundance of caution, we are going to take a step back. So once they said yes, I mean, there could be a nuclear holocaust going on, and Michigan's going to play Ohio State. And So, but you're right. These states seem to be, and then that whole region seems to be exploding. It sounds like in the Dakotas, they're like, they've run out of hospital, but they're shipping them over to Montana, which is also exploding. So it is bizarre to me. I think this decision was obviously not made on, well, this thing seems to be going away. This decision was made on, are we all comfortable with the fact that this thing is going to run through our campus one way or another? Let's play some football. And so the other thing to remember as we kind of, get into basketball, we should remember that college football is still like 2/3 of all college sports revenue, as much as college basketball is important to a larger number of universities. And we are going to see, if college basketball does not find its way back into the American popular vernacular this winter, we are going to see, there are going to be a lot of people looking for work. Right. And so it could potentially change the entire nature of college campuses for the foreseeable future. If you believe, like I do, that, for a lot of these college campuses, college sports is an integral part of it.
Yeah, I think it certainly could. I'm still hopeful that college basketball is able to come back. Here's, though, my number one concern with both college football being played now and college basketball potentially coming back in just about a month's time. At this point, with what we've learned about the virus, it certainly does not seem like it is a great risk, at least in terms of mortality for these athletes. Long-term health effects, TBD, severity, ability to transmit, all still largely TBD. I am worried, though, that the regular things that people like to do, people's businesses, people's ability to live a regular life, those things will not return until the virus is under control. If the numbers keep spiking, we may continue to figure out how to play college football and basketball, but we're not going to be able to have 100% capacity in the local diner down the street. We're not going to be able to have live music in the bar across town. We're not going to be able to have fairs and festivals and just large gatherings of people until we get the virus under control. And the more that we abnormally return to normal, hey, look, a college football game with a lot of people there is preventing us from getting the restrictions gone. And that's my concern with the numbers and with college sports being played, is less so about the health and safety of the athletes, which obviously, yes, I am concerned about that, but I feel as though the protocols are in place to make that, to meet that challenge. But it's not meeting the challenge of society getting back to normalcy. And that's where I wish college sports were a little bit better.
It's not, I would suggest the Nick Saban and Ed Ogeron's like, look, it's not my job to get your concert back on. It ain't my job to it ain't my job to get your deli open. It is what it is. But look, they are doing what they think they need to do to keep their industry moving forward. Right. And that's kind of what they care about at this point. They are not as concerned, again, about the rest of the world.
It's true.
So, and it's got to be frustrating. It's got to be frustrating when we look over to China and they're like basically back to normal. They're like,
right.
what?
Right.
Corona, what?
Right.
Right.
Well,
they got this Taiwan. They go to beach vacations, discotheques.
Right.
By the way, so that's one of, like, they're always like, well, they're going to have to shut down the discotheque. Are there places in this world where they still refer to like nightclubs as like discotheque? Like where?
I can only hope, right? I feel like that's a thing that you'd get like if you went to a mid-tier Caribbean island resort.
Sure.
Like, I feel like that's where the discotheque still exists.
So B, what's the place? I'm not suggesting this is a terrible conversation to have, right?
Okay. Let's definitely have it then.
If you had to steal a car,
okay.
No. So, what is the thing that you are most willing to put yourself at risk to do? So let's say, right. So for a lot of people, look, going to these college football games, and we haven't gotten to the fact that Dan Mullen basically jinxed himself into the coronavirus.
Yeah.
By the way, how salty was he to losing to Texas A&M? I mean, that was ridiculous.
Lost to Texas A&M, said I want 90,000 people in the swamp, got COVID,
said, yep.
Game against LSU canceled. That is a week.
That is a week. I don't know if they're ever playing again. Like Florida they're going to play their whole schedule in like February. So, but a lot of the college football fans, they're like, this is so important to them, right? This is the thing. It's so hard for them to understand not doing this. What is the thing that you would be like? We both just said, I don't understand going to a movie theater right now. Like you,
right. Yeah.
That one, that's the one. Although I will say, and by the way, I'm not encouraging anyone to break the law on my behalf. That said, if anyone knows where I might be able to see Tenet, be happy. For my kid's bar mitzvah, it's for the kid. It's for the kid. If anyone sends me an email that doesn't have a virus attached to it, that just happens to magically, show that movie, I wouldn't tell. But what would be the thing, and would it be sports related, that would be the thing that you'd be most likely to put and I know what you're going to say.
I mean, I don't know. So I don't typically like crowded activities to begin with, right? We talked on a show, whether it was last week or a couple weeks ago, about how crowded concerts and stuff. I don't miss those. Like the idea of a socially distant concert is my ideal concert. Restaurants, like going out to certain nice restaurants,
you like
but
restaurants.
You can still do that with like a 25% capacity or on a patio somewhere.
But I'm not comfortable. Safe. I'm not comfortable inside a restaurant right now. I'm not. Once the masks come off, I'm seeing that mouth breather out there. He's just spraying. He's eating with his mouth open. I mean, I don't have a good answer. My answer is probably either restaurants or airplanes. Airplanes where I was going to go. I imagine this to you. I don't enjoy watching other people eat.
I mean, who does? Are there people out there that derive pleasure out of being like, oh yeah, get that spaghetti parm? Like, is that a hobby to some people? Are they like, I just want to sit here?
A fetish of food. They're No, I don't want to eat anything. I just want to watch.
I have a friend, and I'm debating whether I can tell this story, but I'm going to tell it anyway.
You can. Just don't say the name.
I have a friend who told me about a time that she went on a date, and the guy that she was on a date with wanted to feed her, but not like cutesy, like, oh, you want a bite of this? But like literally wanted to feed her the entire meal. And she had to be like, this isn't happening.
He just wanted to sit next to her and cut.
Like literally, like I will cut it and I will present it to you on a fork.
I think I'd do it. I think if someone
No.
I think I would do it. Once in a lifetime. You just try it. You just give it just one.
No way.
Okay. All right. I'll take this a step further. One of the women about whom you admire.
Gotcha.
Without naming any names, right?
Uh-huh.
We know who your political crush is. I
We
won't.
We
Your
sure do.
dangerous political crush, but your femme fatale, perhaps. Literally at this point now.
Okay. Let's get this totally inappropriate hypothetical out.
If she's like, I would love to go out with you, Geoff Brault. I'd love to go out with you, but I'm gonna have to feed you. We might hit it off. This could be your forever. Like, this could be what makes you complete. This could be what completes you. And she's like, I
couldn't do it. No way. I thought you were gonna say I would have to feed, like, you have to. She was gonna say you have to feed me.
No,
and I was gonna
she
be like,
wants to feed you.
Maybe could, but in reverse, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. No way.
You are going to give up on a life of being with your potential soulmate, who is also very likely very wealthy, because every night when you're like, hey, what's for dinner? And she's like, why don't you have a seat? I'm going to, you'd always have two chairs right next to each other. You'd never sit across from each other. How awkward is that in a restaurant too?
That's part of the reason I couldn't do it. I hate the couples that sit on the same side of the booth.
It's the worst. It's actually the worst. It's the worst.
The worst.
It's not acceptable.
There is one scenario in which I will give it a tiny bit of leeway, and that's if you're one of those restaurants that overlooks like a place where the sun sets, and maybe if you sit on one side, the sun just makes it miserable. Even then, I'm like, you should put on your sunglasses. But like, like if you're in like an indoor restaurant or it's after dark and you're sitting on the same side of the booth or the same side of the table, take it inside. Like,
I mean, I'm at the point in my marriage where we will ask for a table for four. Just the two of us.
I'm here as a party of two, but a table for one.
We are totally comfortable spacing out. No, I find sitting on the same side, it's unacceptable. And not only that, it actually ruins everyone else's meal.
It ruins everyone else's meal. Because now if you wanted to have a conversation with someone or you wanted to enjoy, the company of the people you were dining with, now you can't, because your entire evening is dominated by the fact that there are two people canoodling on the same side of the booth. Yeah.
So for me, the thing I would I'm not going to do anything, but I think it would probably be travel. Travel is definitely it. Travel is what I'm starting to miss the most. The ability to, because it's one of the few things that breaks you out of the monotony of your daily routine, which has turned into a living nightmare, right? Where you just do the same thing over and over again. That when you get on an airplane, you go somewhere else, no matter what, you're automatically in, you're out of your routine. It's something new.
And don't discount the psychological benefits of the time between when you book a trip and when you take a trip, because having that thing to look forward to, that's been one of the hardest things for me. Is, this kind of pandemic lockdown situation has taken away so many things to look forward to. It's taken so many dates off the calendar that to be like, I got this thing coming up, and that kind of pulls you through a couple of long weeks.
I'll tell you what, if you like traveling, one of the most glorious kind of periods is particularly if you're going in like a car service is driving you, when you sit in that car, that drive to the airport, that anticipation, that could be pretty exciting, especially if you're not doing the drive.
Yeah, as long as you don't get a chatty driver, though. Oh boy, I had a travel nightmare one time where it was literally awake for over 24 consecutive hours, and finally got in the car to get from the airport back to my car to go home and be dead to the world for 2 days. And the guy, nicest guy in the world. I mean, nice guy, nothing, just wanted to chat the whole time. And it's just really, really, it's a social situation that I do not know how to navigate, to be like, sir, zip it. Like, I don't know how to do that. So you give the kind of like the half-assed disinterested answer. Be like, where are you coming from? California. Oh, is it nice out there?
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, that's what the phone's for, though. That's what you do. You got to use the phone. You're like, oh, I got to get this.
I didn't want to fake a phone call. Then I still got to talk. I wanted to sit there in silence and lament the fact that I was still awake. Maybe even catch a nap, but I couldn't do it. That was a tough one. Last thing I want to talk about in this episode that has weaved a very odd trail in a very strange weaving. We were talking about things that we were surprised about with the pandemic in hindsight. Some numbers came out this week from the Marist College Center for Sports Communication. They had a wonderful idea to leverage the Marist poll, two on-campus institutions.
Hold on.
To do some polling. I mean, what a tremendous idea!
It absolutely is. I wonder what the genesis of that idea. I wonder if there was a founding director who worked there for several years and toiled and crafted. I wonder. I mean, look, the work they're doing now is fantastic, and I agree that was great. So I wonder if there's who was the brainchild of that.
We may never know, but what I do know is shout out to the current director, Jane McManus, and Lee Marengoff, who runs the Marist poll.
Oh, both of them deserve all the credit. Yeah, no, but we probably could find out who founded the Center for Sports Communication, and did such a good job. Was then recruited for a big position at Montclair State to run a media school.
I don't know where we could get access to that kind of information. But what I do know is there was a poll put in the field last week, and there were some numbers that came out.
Yeah.
We thought with sports returning, right, a big impetus for this. Everybody's like, we need something to do. We need something to watch. We need something to get into. No, we don't. Turns out that people were not willing to just mindlessly sit there and watch anything, because sports viewership is down across the board, and it is not down for whatever reason bad actor du jour is telling you that it's down for basically every reason you can possibly think of.
Yeah, and so it's interesting, and I need to dig into the data a little bit more, and this is like the huge question, obviously, for these networks who are basically, and for the leagues who are basically saying, look, we can't fill our stands, but this TV audience is going to buoy us. If people aren't going live and they're really not watching in person, we're going to start to have a real financial issue, which will force the narrative of these organizations having to get fans back in the stands, or they're going to run into some real financial issues. I mean, the NHL is not going to survive like that, right? To have low ratings, lack of interest, and no one in the stands. So, and I think there was an assumption that more people would watch. You're right. So I would say a few things. I know there were some numbers that came out in the poll about, people weren't watching because of political this. And I agree that probably people said that, but it doesn't seem like that's entirely the reason, because it doesn't weigh along with what's actually happening on the ground.
It's equaled out, by the way, by people that are watching more for political reasons. So it just all comes out in the wash. But really, I think when you look at the data, there's like 5 reasons, and 20% of people say they're watching less because of every reason.
Yeah.
So it's just,
there's a few things. So first off, look, I think we're starting to realize that people want to watch, and it'd be interesting to see if maybe the SEC starts a little bit better. People like to watch the pomp and circumstance. Yep. Apparently, and because no one's going to tell me that bubble basketball wasn't amazing. It was great basketball. I mean, anyone who's like, well, they're not playing, it's not the same level. They don't know basketball. That was high level basketball, high intensity. And to be honest, taking away the fans made it a lot more balanced. And you saw teams jockeying, going back and forth. I mean, look at what happened in baseball, the way this guy, I mean, I think you're seeing high level athletics, particularly in the NBA. So that would be, I think people actually want to see and have the normal cadence of going back and forth, seeing the fans in the stand. The other thing, and I think Jane really kind of made this point, certainly, about people are just kind of occupied and busy. I think in general, and cable news has been through the roof, right? Cable news is doing fantastic. MSNBC, CNN, Fox, obviously through the roof. This election is a giant vacuum. It is sucking the life out of everything. You cannot, I mean, look, most people at home right now care about 2 things, the election and Sportish. Now, thank God for them. Yeah. Sportish is only 1 day a week that they have to commit to, right? Thank God for the time
and
being.
At midnight where there's not a lot else going on. But you're right. And the numbers bear that out. 20% of people said that they are watching less sports because they are instead consuming content about the election. 35% of people said they are watching less sports because they are consuming information about the coronavirus or dealing with coronavirus related issues. Those are of people that say they're watching less sports. There's but I was
other
shocked.
stuff to do. Like let me want to know what I did. I'm working on, and anyone who wants to help, tweet at me. Keith Strudler or at Sportish Pod, I'm building a rubber band powered car with Elliot because that's what you do in STEM. So, I mean, by the way, they're not easy to build. And you know what?
Okay.
By the way, I'm not very comfortable right now because the super glue has congealed on my fingers.
That is a tough situation. Rubber band powered car. Okay.
So they had to be some kind of, non-battery, like it had to be self-propelled, right? It had to be, this was kind of an eco, STEM project. So you could do a balloon, you get your wind power. We went with the rubber band, but it's not as easy to execute. The YouTube videos look easy. And then you get down to brass tacks and, it's not so simple. So I think families have a lot going on. They want to watch the election. They're uptight about coronavirus. And I think there's just too much occupying, and perhaps it is hard. I mean, there is a certain amount of joy that comes along with watching sports, and it's not a particularly joyful moment in this country. No matter where you are, you're either worried about the virus, you're worried that your kids aren't going to school, you're worried about the fact that you're never going back to college, you lost your job. Yeah, it doesn't seem to have the same cathartic feel as we had during other national tragedies, which were generally speaking shorter lived, right? So the 9/11 period, that became kind of our creeping out. There's no creeping out of this coronavirus. Like in 7 years, we'll all be able to walk outside now, right?
It's sports are a social they're not a social, but they are a social construct, but they are a social activity, right? I think most people like sports because it gives them a community. And right now we are in a time in which you're kind of your own community. Like you're supposed to stay away from your community. And if you can't, have all your buddies over to watch the game, or you can't go to the bar down the street to watch the game, I think a lot of people just aren't that interested in it. Plus all the other reasons that were illuminated in the numbers. So another thing we were wrong about with this virus, it just goes to show, there's all this certainty, there's all these opinions, there's all these people out there that are like, well, surely these numbers are going to be through the roof. Everybody's going to want to sit there and watch basketball at 5 p.m. on a Thursday. And it turns out they don't.
No. And again, what's interesting to me is I actually watched more NBA basketball this playoff season than I have in years. So I watched it. I also appreciated the basketball, and I don't watch for the pomp and circumstance. So I watch for the basketball. So I will dig through the numbers a little bit more, but it is interesting, and it is going to, maybe more pointedly, it's going to create some existential challenges for these sports leagues to figure out how to get people back in the stands.
I did not see what should have been your issue reflected in why they're not watching as much sports, because they created a sports television show. And that's what we did here with Sportish. And you've just consumed another episode of it. And we're hopeful that you'll consume another episode of it when we're back next week, same time for the Fans Network. You can find the archives online at ftfnext.com or listen to the audio version wherever podcasts are served. Thanks a lot, everybody. We'll see you again.
Thanks for listening to Sportish. See you next time.